The camera opens on a runway at dawn. Cold concrete, long shadows, heat shimmer already beginning to rise. And then it appears. A shape that feels wrong for this century. Swept wings, a massive frame, 8 engines hanging beneath it like artifacts from another age. This aircraft should not still exist. It was designed with slide rules built for a world that officially ended decades ago, and yet here it is rolling forward as if time simply gave up trying to stop it. The B-52 Stratofortress, an aircraft older than most of the pilots who fly it, older than the fathers and sometimes the grandfathers of the people inside the cockpit. And now, in the 2020s, the United States Air Force has made a decision that forces a question no one expected to be asking again. Why are they changing the B-52 now? Because this is not a routine upgrade. This is not a cosmetic refresh or a simple life extension. This is a transformation that will take more than 15 years to complete, cost billions of dollars, and keep a bomber designed in the early 1950s flying into the 2050s. And the reason why tells us something unsettling about how military power engineering decisions and history collide. To understand why this is happening now, you have to go back to what the B-52 was built to be. The aircraft first flew in 1952 at the height of the Cold War, when the United States needed a bomber that could sit on nuclear alert indefinitely and, if ordered, fly halfway around the world to deliver weapons that could end civilization. This was a time before GPS, before digital avionics, before fly-by-wire systems. Long-range flight meant paper maps, pen calculations, and raw endurance. A jet-powered bomber itself was still a radical idea. The B-52 was designed for that world, and against all expectations, it worked. It flew over Vietnam, over the Middle East, over Afghanistan. It dropped unguided bombs, then later launched precision weapons from hundreds of miles away. It survived attempt after attempt to replace it. The B-58, the B-70. Later, more advanced bombers like the B-1 and B-2. Some of those aircraft are still around, but all of them will likely be retired before the B-52. Not because the B-52 is faster or stealthier, but because it is adaptable in ways no one fully anticipated when it was drawn up on drafting tables. But that adaptability has limits, and those limits are now being reached. The real problem is not the airframe. Structurally, the B-52 is remarkably sound. Its wings were built in an era when engineers assumed the worst and designed accordingly. The aircraft can still carry enormous payloads. It can loiter for long periods. It can launch standoff weapons far outside enemy defenses. In an age of long-range missiles, that capability still matters. What is holding the B-52 back is not its structure. It is the technology inside it, and most critically, the engines. Every operational B-52 today flies with Pratt & Whitney TF-33 turbofan engines, a design whose roots stretch back to the late 1950s. These engines were born before humans had flown in space. For decades, that wasn't a deal-breaker. They were inefficient, but they were common. Civilian Boeing 707s used similar engines. Military transports used them too. Spare parts were everywhere. Maintenance crews knew them intimately, but that world is gone. The airliners were retired decades ago. The overhaul shops shut down. Suppliers vanished. Today, the Air Force keeps these engines alive by cannibalizing old stock, reworking parts, and scavenging engines from long-retired civilian aircraft. According to the Air Force's own assessments, the TF-33 becomes completely unsustainable around 2030, not because it suddenly stops working, but because the industrial base required to keep it safe and airworthy simply will not exist anymore. No parts means no flying. And that is the clock driving everything. At this point, the obvious question arises, why not retire the aircraft altogether? The answer is that replacing the B-52 would cost far more, take far longer, and leave a capability gap the Air Force is not willing to accept. The bomber's role has evolved, but it has not disappeared. And as global tensions rise again, long-range strike platforms are becoming more relevant, not less. So if the engines must go, what replaces them? On the surface, the answer seems obvious. Modern jet engines are vastly more powerful. Why not replace 8 old engines with 4 modern high-bypass turbofans? One modern engine can easily produce the thrust of 2 TF-33s combined. It sounds simple, logical, efficient. But this is where the past reaches forward and grabs the present. The B-52's wings were designed in the early 1950s around 8 small engines spread across the span. Those engines are not just power plants, they are aerodynamic devices. Each engine pod affects airflow over the wing. They act like wing fences, shaping lift distribution and stability. Replace those 8 narrow pods with 4 large modern engines, and everything changes. Wing bending moments increase. Torsional loads shift. Flutter characteristics change. Lose 1 engine out of 4, and the asymmetric thrust is far more severe than losing 1 out of 8. That would require a larger tail and a more powerful rudder, which would alter the aircraft's stability. Change the tail, and you change the entire flight envelope. So instead of redesigning the aircraft, the Air Force made a different choice. Keep 8 engines. Replace every single one. The requirement was extremely narrow. The new engine had to closely match the old one's thrust weight and airflow characteristics to avoid touching the airframe. Only a handful of modern engines even qualified. In 2021, the Air Force made its choice: Rolls-Royce. Specifically, the F130 engine based on the BR-700 family used in Gulfstream business jets. The choice surprised many, but it made sense. The Air Force already flies this engine. It understands it, and it represents a generational leap. 30 to 40% less fuel burn, far greater reliability, significantly more electrical power. Power the B-52 desperately needs for new radar systems, avionics, and future upgrades. When the transformation is complete, the B-52 will receive a new designation for the first time since the 1960s. A 1950s bomber powered by 21st century engines flying toward the 2050s. Some airframes may exceed 100 years of service. That fact alone forces a confrontation with a deeper truth about aerospace engineering. Airframes often outlive the technology inside them, and design decisions made early can echo across generations. 8 engines made sense in the 1950s. They make no sense today. And yet the cost of undoing that decision is so high that the world's most powerful Air Force chose to buy more than 600 new engines instead. So why are they changing the B-52 now? Because time finally caught up with the engines. Because the world is getting colder again. And because adaptability, not youth, has always been this aircraft's greatest weapon. The B-52 is not being preserved out of nostalgia. It is being prepared. And that leaves one final question hanging in the air.